Everton yesterday, John Textor has entered a period of exclusivity to buy Everton. I mean, that deal, how complicated is it given his shares in Crystal Palace?
Yeah, it looks pretty complicated because there doesn't seem to be an easy way in which he can own interest in two clubs at the same time. I mean, the rules do look quite clear that that will not be permitted, even if he was to put those shares into a trust, because he would still be the ultimate beneficiary of those shares. I think he could effectively gift them to some members of his family, but only on the basis that the assurances that he then gave to the league about his lack of control or influence or beneficial ownership of those shares was convincing to the league. If that could be the case, and he really had no control or upside from that, then that might work. But other than that, it does look like he needs to sell them. And selling them won't be straightforward because there's loads of clubs available and it's a minority interest. So, we know he could sell them to the other owners of Palace, but it appears, if we were to believe what we see in the press, that the amount they're prepared to pay is effectively what Textor originally paid for them, and therefore doesn't really give value for some of the progress that Palace have made since that time. So I think he's probably going to be unlikely to want to do that deal. Look, if he can't get rid of the Palace shares, then he can't buy Everton. And in any event, he doesn't seem to have the resources to do the deal himself. He looks like he needs to bring in third-party financing to do the deal. So you would question how that's going to work anyway in the context of the complexity of Everton. But we will, as always, we will have to see. It doesn't strike me on the face of it as a deal in terms of exclusivity that Everton needed to do and Moshiri needed to do. And there are some reports that giving the exclusivity has surprised a few people within the club. I don't know who those people are because obviously there's a tiny board at Everton, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure who would be that important to be surprised. But and you would assume it was a board decision to hand over exclusivity to Textor. That said, I don't really understand why he needs to be given exclusivity at this stage. But we're trying to piece it together only via the press, and you have to assume, I guess, that Moshiri believes Textor can do a deal in short order, and possibly believes that he has a deal lined up for the Palace shares that can be executed and completed quite quickly. I mean, the other part of it, as I understand it, is that any buyer of Textor's shares would need to go through their own owners and directors test with the Premier League, because the stake's a big stake. So again, that seems to put some kind of delay in the process as well, and some uncertainty. Clearly, that would be dealt with in a much easier way if it was bought by the other existing shareholders of Palace. Maybe that's the plan that's there, but I don't know. There's a lot we don't know, but it doesn't, on the face of it, looking from the outside, it looks a slightly strange move to give him exclusivity at this stage.
I think it maybe it kind of says to me there's a bit of desperation in there from maybe Moshiri to just get a deal in place, really. I mean, I guess it is difficult for him because he can't finance the club, but obviously that Textor deal could still put the club in jeopardy if it takes several months to go through, I guess.
Yeah. Well, look, I think there is an element of, I mean, desperation might be the wrong word. I don't know, because we obviously we don't have the visibility of the cash position and how short or not they're going to be over the next few months. But it seems to me they definitely will need cash as we go through the rest of the year, because they have limited amounts going in for the next few months. But I mean, clearly Moshiri wants to sell the club. It's and it may be that it's simply a case of very little credible interest aside from Textor, and if that's the case, Moshiri may think, well, this is effectively the best I've got. I mean, I have been in situations in selling clubs where sometimes you have to do deals that you would ordinarily not want to do, just because you don't have, you know, a vast array of options. So sometimes you have to do deals that are not ideal, and that does happen. And maybe that's the situation here. But the as I say, the ultimate problem is that it's not necessarily deliverable as a deal. Whilst he's got those Crystal Palace shares, he cannot buy Everton. So, it's not straightforward.
And then Colin Chung admitted this week that the club can self-fund the rest of the new stadium development. I guess that's one bit of positive news coming out of Everton.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's. I mean, I assume he's not been misquoted. Well, I mean, I did see the interview, so it's not really a misquote. He may not have quite meant what he said, but let's assume he did. And certainly let's assume he's not misleading anybody. That's an important development. That does suggest that whatever went in from Friedkin, in terms of repaying the debt that was there and also giving them a little bit extra, whatever deal was done there was sufficient to fund the remaining fit out of the stadium, which is clearly a very big positive for Everton, because it takes one of the headaches off the table. However, it still doesn't affect the other requirements that they have for funding the operating losses in the club on a monthly basis, particularly in respect of the wage bill. And so very good news, but not the full answer, but very good news for Everton.